The Supreme Court must never be viewed as a partisan institution.
Welcome back. Day one of Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation hearing just wrapped up following the judge's opening statement after speeches from dozens of people on the Judiciary Committee and those introducing it. That hearing got very heated, though, very quickly earlier today. As soon as the hearing got started, Democrats moved to adjourn. They were demanding a delay to give them time to review tens of thousands of pages of Kavanaugh documents that were released just last night.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with my colleague, Senator Harris. Mr. Chairman, we received 42,000 documents that we haven't been able to review last night, and we believe this hearing should be postponed.
I know this is an exciting day for all of you here, Mr. Chairman, and you're rightly proud.
Mr. Chairman, if we cannot be recognized, I move to adjourn.
The American people.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
Directly from Judge Kavanaugh.
We cannot possibly move forward, Mr. Chairman.
I extend a very.
What is the rush? What are we trying to hide by not having the documents out front?
But Republicans refused to adjourn, and the proceedings got back on track after about an hour or so of that back and forth. And by the way, no one has even begun to actually question Judge Kavanaugh. Today was just opening statements from, well, anybody that wanted to apparently give an opening statement. The actual questions, they don't actually begin until tomorrow. Joined now by Rhode Island Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. He is a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he joins me now. Senator Whitehouse, I know you guys just got done. I appreciate you coming here and giving us a few minutes.
Good to be with you.
Let me just start with a simple question. Why did you guys participate in that hearing today? Why didn't you walk out?
I think we do a better job doing our jobs and making our arguments than we do by walking out. Nobody's answered the question when we walk back. And if they simply push him through without our voices being present in the room, I don't think that helps. I'm not sure that this walking out, I don't know where this walking out idea has come from, but I'm not a big proponent of it. I think we have a fight in front of us, and if we're not in the room, that's not going to do anybody any good.
I think the argument that the left will make on this, but those that in the sort of the aggressive progressive, the aggressive progressives, I guess we should call this wing of the party, will say, hey, Mitch McConnell would have pulled out any stop to delay, do whatever it takes. Senate Democrats need to learn to do whatever it takes. What would you say to that criticism?
Mitch McConnell had the benefit of being the majority leader. So he had a lot of
I take your point.
That he could pull out.
I take your point on that.
Our only tool is our voice. And I, for one, am proud of the way the Democrats in the Judiciary Committee made our voices heard today, both about Kavanaugh and about the sped-up ram job procedural process that we're engaged in, and about the larger problem of big corporate special interest capture of the courts. I think those are the important issues, and those are the things we need to continue to battle on today, through the questioning tomorrow and the day after, through our statements afterwards, through our markup on this nominee, through the floor. We need to be deploying our voices, not running away.
But doing it, it sounds like, in what would be referred to as regular order, I guess is the way to look at it?
Well, I don't know that regular order was what we saw today, but we were certainly, I think, within our rights as senators to ask for an adjournment, to seek votes. And we were, I think, given virtually no good arguments on the other side as to why those things shouldn't happen. They just ruled against us procedurally every time and moved on.
So what does that tell you? I mean, I take it that must be very frustrating.
Well, what it tells me is that this is more politically important to the Republicans than probably anything they've done, including the big tax giveaway that they passed some months ago, to restore that fifth Republican vote on the court, so the court can keep delivering these partisan 5-4 decisions that are such a boon for the big Republican interests, is probably their top priority, and they're going to let virtually nothing dissuade them, which makes our voices calling it out all the more important.
Except that some would say voices are one thing, but as you've heard this, and again, I take your point. I don't know, beyond gumming up the works for a couple of days, I don't know what delaying would do, but that's what some would argue, that, you know what, gum up the works. This is that important to them. Make it that.
It doesn't gum up the works not to be there. It doesn't gum up the works not to be there. You've got to be in the arena if you're going to have any effect.
How do you win an argument about document production with the American people?
I think by continuing to emphasize it. I had a Democratic colleague say that, she'd been home and that a lot of people in her home state were talking about this. I was at the McCain services most of the weekend, so I have not been getting as much home state news, but I think the American public are getting that there is something fundamentally unfair about a last-minute 42,000-page document dump, about selecting which 10% of the records you're going to let the other side see.
Right.
And certainly anybody who's ever litigated a case knows perfectly well that you're supposed to go to trial the next day, and on the night before trial begins, you got a 42,000-page document dump. The first thing you're going to do is to go into court the next day and say, I need a continuance, and any decent judge in the country would give you that continuance.
Senator Klobuchar was on Meet the Press on Sunday, and she indicated to me the following, that she has read some papers of Kavanaugh that you are not allowed to release to the public, but you and the committee are allowed to see, that she says would provide the opportunity to ask some eye-opening questions. But let me ask you this: from what you've gone through of the record that we and the public are not allowed to see, but you are on the Judiciary Committee, have you seen anything that you would argue is disqualifying?
There is no single fatal smoking gun that would cause the Republicans to back away from him that I have seen. There are an array of emails and communications that show particularly his integration with Leonard Leo and the Federalist Society, and add to a very strong narrative that this is the big Republican interest behind the Federalist Society actually seizing the court. You have McGahn having admitted that they insourced the Federalist Society to make this selection. You've got Kavanaugh doing 50
Let me ask you this.
speeches
so
to the
Federalist Society would be what? I mean, why does that matter so much? I mean, it's not surprising.
It's not surprising you're not an independent judiciary.
Well, it's pretty clear that presidents are picking people that philosophically believe in sort of their interpretations of the Constitution. So that shouldn't be a surprise, should it not?
I think if President Obama had brought in the president of the American Civil Liberties Union and said, I'm letting you make the choices of who I put on the Supreme Court, and none of us are going to tell the public who's in the room while you vet these candidates and see what promises are made, the 11 Republican heads on the Judiciary Committee would have exploded. And the fact that they are just rolling with these punches, I think, is a sign that the big interests behind the Federalist Society, who are behind Kavanaugh, are also behind all of these senators, and nobody wants to quarrel with the big funders of their party. So it's all line up, salute, and drive this guy onto the court.
You are one of the more thorough legal minds I've interviewed in the Senate. I think it's while you're on Judiciary. I know you were a state attorney general. This is your home turf. Help the viewer tomorrow. When various senators ask the question about settled law, what should they be listening for when it comes to if they care about the Roe decision?
The phrase settled law basically means that there has been a majority decision of the United States Supreme Court that still stands. In that sense, it is settled law. The magic words that people who care about Roe versus Wade should be looking for is also the acceptance that it was correctly decided. Because if it is Kavanaugh's view that Roe versus Wade, although settled, was not correctly decided, then he's very likely to be a vote to repeal or undo it. So you need to not only have it be settled law, but believe that it was correctly settled in order to have any confidence, particularly against President Trump's assertion that Kavanaugh is being put on the court to undo Roe versus Wade.
So for you, that's the code word to listen for tomorrow. How will he answer that question about whether it was correctly decided? All right. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat from Rhode Island, like I said, probably as deep on legal issues as anybody I deal with in the United States Senate. Thanks for coming on and sharing your views, sir.
Thanks, Chuck. Good to be with you.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.